Welcome. Good to see you. Great to have you trusted. Okay, please, then we walk in and they will write a picture of us in front of the flags and then we go to my office.
Are very resilient, but met with many mothers who are very emotional, having lost their children. And I'm very moved by them, and I hope that I'm able to, today and tomorrow, be able to do something to help bring attention to the situation for all of the people in need in Pakistan. And I'll continue to do so through UNHCR, and thank you very much for your time.
Limar has been recovering from an operation to help her walk again. Last July, a barrel bomb destroyed her family home in Syria.
For Angelina Jolie, UNHCR's Goodwill Ambassador, this is a return trip. Her last visit to this warehouse in Kabul was 2 years ago. It is one of 30 informal settlements that houses returning refugees and internally displaced people in Afghan's main city.
With children of my own was, how could this kid be tied and somebody let him go and somebody take care of him and somebody... the reality is he was about 3 years old, they said, when the bombs hit, and he was in Darfur, and he disappeared for 48 hours. And before that he was a very normal little boy. And now and I did see him do it, but he tries to hurt himself. He does, I forget the name for it, but he whacks himself into walls and he goes running off and he'll try to hurt himself and others. And after spending about a half an hour with him, I thought maybe they thought that it was from the bombs, but maybe there is something different about his mind. You know, maybe he's an autistic child, but I spent a half an hour with him, and he was a very normal little kid. He was just really, really scared, really scared. And to spend half an hour and just touch him and pet him, and you know, and hold him and look at him, and it's a part of conflict that we often don't have the time to also think about.
On Friday, UNHCR's Goodwill Ambassador Angelina Jolie came to Altenuzu camp in Turkey.
And how have you found it in Turkey? Have they been treating you well here?
Recently, UNHCR Special Envoy Ms. Angelina Jolie traveled to the Jordan-Syrian border.
Please sit down. I come to you.
This family moved from Damascus to their hometown of Dara 4 months ago. Nearly 500,000 Syrians have been registered in neighboring countries since the conflict began. Hundreds of thousands more are unregistered. The following day, Ms. Jolie visited the sprawling Zatari camp north of Amman. This refugee spoke of her ordeals while in Syria.
Okay, when the bombing got really fierce and hard and non-stopping, they used to hide in holes under the ground.
Her and the children would go into the holes.
Yes, even with the children, because that was the safe, especially at night.
The special envoy viewed a number of the winter projects underway in the camp. More tents are going up. Others are being reinforced and better insulated for protection. Some are getting gas porches.
Caleb Maupin, Press TV News. There have been some reports coming out that a lot of the money allegedly being raised for Syrian refugees is actually going to fund terrorism. Can you talk about this? And also, you mentioned that a number of the insurgent terrorists are from Jordan, and that there have also been reports that Zatari refugee camp, the United Nations refugee camp, is a recruiting ground for the terrorists. And is there any possibility that the UN is in fact enabling this terrorism to continue?
Billions of dollars have been collected in the Gulf states. Billions of dollars have been collected in the Gulf states by so-called NGOs, charity organizations, but also by foreign intelligence services, to be sent to the camps as well as to inside Syria to instigate terrorist acts against the Syrian government. The Syrian government kept asking the Syrians living in these camps to get back to their country, where the government will assume its responsibilities in hosting them the way we are doing it, actually, for millions of Syrians displaced internally. So we don't want to see any Syrian living abroad in these so-called camps, which are a territory for rapes, for early marriage for girls, for training terrorists. It's a haven for training terrorists and recruiting terrorists and sponsoring terrorists from all over the world, actually, not only from amongst the Syrian community living in these camps.
You mentioned that a number of the insurgent terrorists are from Jordan, and that there have also been reports that Zatari refugee camp, the United Nations refugee camp, is a recruiting ground for the terrorists.
The following day, Ms. Jolie visited the sprawling Zatri camp north of Amman. The special envoy viewed a number of the winter projects underway in the camp. More tents are going up. On the third leg of their tour, UNHCR Special Envoy Angelina Jolie and the High Commissioner for Refugees Antonio Guterres came to Turkey. Their first stop was in Kilis camp, home to 12,000 Syrian refugees.
It is now the time for the international community to understand that with high numbers crossing borders, Turkey, like Jordan, like Iraq, like Lebanon, cannot do it alone. They need the solidarity, the engagement of the international community. We badly need at this moment two things: leadership and values. The values that our societies, that are all becoming multi-ethnic, multi-religious and multicultural, need in order to foster inclusion, cohesion, to make people feel they belong, to value diversity, and to confront and defeat political populism. To confront and defeat political populism, xenophobia, racism and violent extremism.
The problem for Mr. Guterres is that since he was elected to be the 9th Secretary General, the challenges he will face have increased greatly.
Rogue regimes represented in this body not only support terrorists, but threaten other nations and their own people with the most destructive weapons known to humanity.
In what would be an unprecedented retreat of U.S. commitments overseas, the White House wants to slash foreign aid to the United Nations and other world bodies. Organizations that keep the peace, help prevent disease and famine, and combat nuclear proliferation.
It's considered an honor in Washington to meet with the Secretary of State. But if you want to talk money, you have to go to Capitol Hill. That's what the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres did on Tuesday and Wednesday. He met with members of Congress who will decide whether to approve the Trump administration's proposed budget for next year. That budget, if passed unchanged, would cut the U.S. contribution to basic UN operations by $440 million. And it would cut the budget for peacekeeping missions by 90%. Guterres has already struggled to get countries to give extra money to combat famine in Yemen, Somalia, Nigeria, and South Sudan. So a sizable cut in U.S. contributions would make his job harder. Thus, the meetings with both Democrats and Republicans.
We live in a democracy, and democratic bodies decide and vote. So we are not talking about assurances, we are talking about a constructive dialogue.
Because the task of building peace and security can never be abandoned, no matter how bleak the situation. But I also speak as a citizen from my country, the United States. I believe all of us who work with the UN preserve this duality. We see a rising tide of nationalism, masquerading as patriotism, and the reemergence of policies encouraging fear and hatred of others. We see some politicians elected partly on the basis of dismissing international institutions and agreements, as if our countries have not benefited from cooperation but actually been harmed by it. When we consider this, all of this and more, as citizens, what is our answer? Do we, as some would encourage us to think, turn our backs on the world and hope that the storm will pass? Or do we strengthen our commitment to diplomacy and to the United Nations? I strongly believe there is only one choice.
I have been very, very direct with Secretary Stoltenberg and members of the alliance in saying that NATO members must finally contribute their fair share and meet their financial obligations. But 23 of the 28 member nations are still not paying what they should be paying and what they are supposed to be paying for their defense.
Very, very active in all of that.
What changed in you in the course of making that film?
And it blows, and it's not big enough. We got to do it again. Where are the kids? And suddenly somebody said they can hear children crying in the jungle. And we didn't have enough lights to light up the jungle. And there are landmines in the country. And I said, this isn't so. Gather the children. We got to count the kids. And we counted the kids, and everybody was there. And then somebody came up to me and they said, we're Buddhist. People died on this land. They're hearing crying because it's the spirit of the ancestors. And you blew a tree. And so we stopped production, and I got incense and water and got on my knees with the rest of them, and we took the time to think about the people who'd been there before, what we were doing, and just stopped everything, and then carried on, and it went easily and beautifully.
Like to keep this strong engagement in the implementation of the sustainable development goals. So any withdrawal, any cut in the development assistance would actually go contrary to the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals agenda that was adopted in 2015 at the United Nations.
We can be.
We must be the first generation
to end extreme poverty.
The generation
most determined
to fight injustice and inequalities.
The generation that saves the planet from climate change.
And this is how it will get done.
The global goals.
A 15-year plan
for everyone, everywhere.
With no one left behind.
We will live in a world
where nobody
anywhere lives in extreme poverty.
Where no one
goes hungry.
Where no one
wakes in the morning
asking if there will be food today.
We will live in a world where no child has to die of
diseases we
child has to die of
diseases we know how to cure.
and where proper health care
is a lifelong right for us all.
We will live in a world
where everyone goes to school.
And education gives us the knowledge
and skills
for a fulfilling life.
We will live in a world where all girls and all women have equal opportunities
to thrive
and be powerful
and safe.
We cannot succeed if half the world is held back. We will live in a world
where all people can get clean water
and proper toilets
at home, at school, and at work.
We will live in a world where
there's sustainable energy for everyone.
Heat, light,
and power for the whole planet.
Without destroying the planet.
We will live in a world where economies prosper and new wealth
Leads to decent jobs
for everyone.
and we will live in a world where our industry,
Our infrastructure and our
best innovations
are not just used to make money, but to make all our lives better.
We will live in a world
Where prejudices and extremes of inequality
Are defeated
inside our countries,
and between different countries.
where people live in cities and communities
that are safe, progressive,
and support everyone who lives there.
where we replace
what we consume.
Planet where we put back what we take out of the earth.
We live in a world that is decisively rolling back the threat of
climate change.
where we restore and protect the life in our oceans and seas. Where we restore
and protect
Life on land,
the forests,
Animals,
the earth itself.
with peace between and inside countries.
where all governments are open.
And answer to us for what they do at home and abroad.
And the justice rules.
with everyone equal before the law.
where all countries and we their people,
Work together.
partnerships of all kinds,
to make these goals
A reality.
These are the United Nations global goals
for sustainable development.
Let's get to work.
Let's make it happen.